Well, I must say, even though I'm regarded as pessimistic, I was never pessimistic enough to think that things would degenerate to the point where they are now.
Black Lives Matter is a tool to reimagine a world where Black people are free to exist, free to live.
What is your opinion of Black Lives Matter?
I think they're one of a long list of groups that are self-serving, and I think they can do an enormous amount of damage just by the fact that they're promoting this belligerent attitude toward the police, which in turn tends to create all kinds of bad episodes. All of this furor has been created over an incident in which I don't see any serious disagreement, namely that the policeman had no business sitting on this man's neck.
Mm-hmm.
The most conservative people I know have said, no, he had no business doing that. The liberals say it. I don't know what the argument is about.
Professor Melina Abdullah is the LA co-founder of Black Lives Matter. What immediate changes are you wanting these protests to achieve?
We want defunding of police.
Well, I must say, even though I'm regarded as pessimistic, I was never pessimistic enough to think that things would degenerate to the point where they are now, where adult human beings are talking about getting rid of the police, where they're talking about reducing the number of police, reducing the resources put into police work at a time when murder rates have been skyrocketing over what they were just a year ago in 2019. And what is frightening is how many people in responsible positions are caving in to every demand that is made, repeating any kind of nonsense that you're supposed to repeat. I do believe that we may well reach a point of no return. I hope that, of course, that will never happen. But there is such a thing as a point of no return.
George Floyd's story has been the story of black folks, because ever since 401 years ago, the reason we could never be who we wanted and dreamed to be in is you kept your knee on our neck.
Racism is not about just the times where you are called a bad word by somebody who's ignorant and doesn't like black people, right? That's prejudice.
Instead, it's about how society is really structured to keep people of color from positions of power, to make it more difficult, say, for communities of color to own property, to own homes, to advance in society.
All the incentives politically are for black leaders to blame all problems in the black community on the larger society. And that enables them to take on the role of being the defender of the black community against enemies, which in turn creates the situation in which many blacks don't feel that anything that they do is going to help themselves unless it's done politically as a group. That there's no point. I mean, why would you, if you believe what they say, why would you want to knock yourself out in school knowing that the man is not going to let you get anywhere? Well, one of the most pathetic things I heard in recent years was a young black man saying that, you know, at one point he thought he would join the Air Force and become a pilot. And then he says he realized that the white man is not going to let a black man become a pilot. And he was saying this decades after the Tennessee Airmen had established their reputation in combat in Europe. Hopelessness is one of the big products of the race industry. That you have no chance. You have to produce that kind of feeling in order to serve the interests of those in the race industry.
And if you're a black person in America, from slavery, from day one, the number of injustices that have held black people back in America amount to an insurmountable, like you look at black people's freedom, you look at black people's land, just taking that away from black people alone is crippling them. And so you combine that with slavery, and then you look at Jim Crow laws. You didn't let black people in America live in the areas that they wanted to live in. They couldn't get loans from the banks that they wanted to get loans from.
If you look at the average credit score of people of different ethnic backgrounds, you'll discover that the order in which they rank by credit score is also the order in which they rank by acceptance for the highest quality mortgages. That is, whites, for example, are turned down far more than Asian Americans.
So when you combine all of those things, I think it's safe to say that black Americans have a conversation that they need to be having with the United States. Doesn't involve me, doesn't involve white people, it's like, yo, American government, meet the black people.
You see, you can't have a welfare state in a democratic country unless you first have a welfare state vision. The vision of grievances, victimology, and resentments. The idea that the world owes you something.
I've been able to find a single country in the world where the policies that are being advocated for blacks in the United States have lifted any people out of poverty. I've seen many examples around the world of people who began in poverty and ended in affluence. Not one of them has followed any pattern at all like what is being advocated for blacks in the United States. Many groups have remained in poverty for a very long time trying to follow those patterns.
Black Americans, a group often identified as beneficiaries of the welfare state in America, made considerable economic progress in the 20th century. But much, if not most, of this progress was prior to the massive expansion of the American welfare state.
As of 1940, 87% of black households were in poverty. Over the next 20 years, that declined to 47%. This is all prior to the civil rights laws, prior to the social welfare policies of the Johnson administration. Over the next 20 years, it fell an additional 18 points. But that was just the same trend continuing at a reduced rate. Affirmative action is even worse. Poverty rate was something like 30% among black households before affirmative action. And a decade after affirmative action, it was 29%. This is not the same as the 40% decline that occurred before there were any civil rights laws and before there was any social welfare state.
People have discriminated against other people wherever they've had the power to do it, almost everywhere in the world and almost every period of history. Some groups are kept back by this, and some groups, it seems to make no difference whatever. Insofar, for example, as you have entrepreneurial skills, the fact that people didn't hire Jews in the 19th century didn't stop Jews from hiring each other and setting up and dominating industries such as the garment industry or the beginning of the great Hollywood movie studios and other areas of the economy. It is the skills that are crucial and not the fact that other people are willing or unwilling to hire you. Even groups that have a great animosity towards other groups will nevertheless hire members of those groups with skills in the long run if there are enough of them to make it worth their while.
What's the lesson in that statement for black Americans?
Skills are what matters. If other people will not acknowledge your skills in the short run, then those same skills are useful in the black community with other blacks. It's what has made other groups advance from poverty to affluence. I know of nothing else that's really done it.